begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down. Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
Shout out Young Swish. Tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, as always, 𝗦𝗢𝗟𝗦𝗢𝗪. But we've got a special guest joining us in the studio. You guys know him as the fantasy guy, the fantasy guru, one half of the law firm. Michael O'Hara's in the building. Mike, welcome back to the TWSN Studios, my man.
Happy to be here, man. It's another Fantasy Football Friday that we're going to have in the books here. And, I mean, it's been a whirlwind of a week one. I'm sure a lot of people put up some duds, weren't entirely thrilled, but NFL offense is going to bounce back, hopefully, and fantasy manager is going to bounce back as well.
By some people put up some duds, don't you mean yourself probably? You know, it's you probably had a lot of hype in some of these guys, namely Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? I know that's your guy, right?
I mean, I can't personally complain about how my teams were doing.
Okay.
Obviously, some disappointments out there, but all in all, it's a long season. Generally, the idea in week one is not to be panicking too much, and I don't think anyone should be.
Okay. I agree with you, unless you're a Giants fan or a Dolphins fan and you're having a players-only meeting in week one, or after week one. But we got a lot to get into on the show today. If you guys could do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live, when we upload content from the TWSN Studios. Boys, I want to start off with Caleb Williams. Let's have a conversation about Caleb Williams. You know, sorry we even got before we even start, I want to apologize. Sorry we had a little bit of late start, I had a little bit of technical difficulties. Then my chair broke. So we've had an interesting start to the morning show, that's for sure. But you know, honestly, we ain't complaining too much. You know, we got to keep it moving, got to keep the show going on. But thank you guys for sticking with us. We appreciate that. So did we overrate Caleb Williams? Obviously, Caleb Williams struggled in his debut with Ben Johnson. I think I want to have Daniel start this conversation off, because Daniel is the residential Caleb Williams believer. Daniel is the one that said, you know, Caleb Williams was going to throw for 300 yards. Daniel, talk to us. What was going on with your man, Caleb Williams?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, let me start this off by saying I'm still a believer in him, 1,000%. Like I'm still bought in, but I do think that there is going to be growing pains with Ben Johnson. There's going to be growing pains even with Caleb Williams himself. And the sticking point I will have with Caleb Williams, and the thing that I think gives me the most hope and excitement, is when you look at the quarterbacks in the NFL, you want somebody who can either be an elite processor, or you want a guy who is a quote-unquote alien at the quarterback, a guy that can escape the pocket, a guy that can extend plays, a guy that can make the you know, impossible possible. And I truly believe that that's Caleb Williams, and I think he showed it, right? I think that he showed his ability to go out there and make these big time plays, escape the pocket, and make life a living hell at times for, you know, one of the best defenses in the league with Brian Flores and the Minnesota Vikings. So that is the thing that I was definitely most excited to see, is this dude is still uber athletic. This dude is still one of the best creators in the league. And you can kind of compare him to a Patrick Mahomes. I think that is the hope and the expectation. Obviously, Mahomes has won multiple Super Bowls and he is the upper echelon. But when you look at pro comparisons, I don't believe he's like a Josh Allen. I don't believe he's like a Joe Burrow. I think Patrick Mahomes is the expectation. That's the hope, right? Because we can bash on Mahomes by saying at times maybe he's not the most accurate. At times maybe he's not the best at, you know, chugging the offense down the field. Maybe he's not the best, you know, mental processor. Maybe he's not the best at doing this, but he is able to escape plays. He's able to make plays outside of the pocket. And I think that is the hope with Caleb Williams. And the downside, and I will be honest, the second half looked brutal. And I think the accuracy is the biggest thing that's causing me some concern. That's the thing that I'm saying, hey, if I were to get this take wrong, if Caleb Williams were not to be elite, it is because of the lack of his accuracy. It's the lack of consistency in his game. And I think that is the one biggest red flag that I got from this game, because he started off strong. He's making all these plays outside of the pocket, but it was the inaccuracy. I mean, you go back and look at the tape, he missed a lot of throws, a lot. And that is like you said, that is my major red flag. But for me, especially with the Chicago Bears, you have to bet on it because this is the guy you took #1 overall. This is what you signed up for. You signed up for a guy that makes all these plays outside of the pocket, and you signed up for Ben Johnson to make his life easier. And if this doesn't work out, I do believe it is a failure of, Caleb Williams, because at this point, he's got a lot going for me. You got 𝗦𝗣𝗢𝗡𝗦𝗢𝗡, you got DJ Moore, you have your first round tight end, 𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗡. But I thought that this all around was a rough performance from Caleb Williams and even Ben Johnson outside of a couple plays, because like I said, you look at and compare these guys. Tyler Warren for the Colts, albeit they're different players, he was instilled into their game plan versus your other guys. You didn't really get them involved besides a DJ Moore, right, in the backfield, which I absolutely loved. But I'm a believer in Caleb Williams. I think like I said, his ability to create outside of the pocket, I think that's going to help them. I still believe that this is a playoff caliber team.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of what you said is spot on. But the reason that I still have optimism here is what you talked about, is that they're quarterbacks who win on the mental side. They get through their reads quickly. They throw with anticipation. And there's quarterbacks who create something out of nothing. They extend plays. Caleb Williams, certainly the latter. But it was to the point where his processing and his timing and his willingness to get rid of the ball, it was a detriment last season. And I think he vastly improved in that area in week 1 against the Vikings. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but it was to the point where it wasn't such a massive issue. Last year, Caleb Williams, among the league leaders in pressure to sack ratio, you saw it on the field. He was holding the ball, taking really ugly sacks, knocking them out of field goal range at time, ending drives with how he was taking sacks and refusing to just check the ball down when it was there, when it was needed. But I think that he was vastly improved. And going back to what you're talking about with the accuracy, you saw a lot of people drag him through the mud, just coming down on him, especially for that throw to DJ Moore near the pylon. And I think that it's just a reminder of what we see on camera, what we see on the broadcast isn't always what's actually happening, because the next day, offensive coordinator Declan Doyle came out and said that the overthrow was because of an ad lib from DJ Moore that threw off the timing of the play. So I just think we have to have some patience. We have to understand that this is still a second-year quarterback who's in a new system. And I think the biggest bugaboo for me, the biggest area of concern last year was his unwillingness to get rid of the ball when it was absolutely necessary. And I think he showed vast improvements in that area in week 1 against a really, really brutal Brian Flores defense. So I think that there's plenty of reason to be optimistic moving forward.
I think that's fair. I think where the questions start to arise a little bit and why people are even talking about it is because, you think about to the off season, people are even saying there was a little bit of an issue with Caleb Williams grasping the Ben Johnson scheme to a degree where his timing was off in practice. And, I think that we can reserve to holding judgment a little bit on Caleb Williams, but I also think that the antenna should be up a little bit. We should be paying attention to it to a larger degree, because you got to show something. You got to instill belief, right? And at this point, the Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson matchup, marriage, I would say, so far, obviously it's only in its early stages, but you've got to be looking out for it, because you think at the very least, this guy's a young quarterback, but he's in his second year. He's coming together with this offensive guru that's going to be able to get the most out of the weapons. To me, I want to see 𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗡 featured more. Yeah. I want to see guys like 𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗡 featured a whole ton more. You know what I mean? Like, it just feel like the easy things that Caleb Williams should be doing at this stage, he isn't doing, right? But again, maybe that was just jitters week 1. JJ McCarthy answered the call, right? And, he struggled a little bit at points in the game, but he found a way to kind of push through and get a win. And, Caleb has an entire season under his belt compared to a JJ McCarthy. So again, I know that the two can't necessarily be, I guess, compared right now, considering everything, new coach, the whole 9 yards versus the coach that's kind of been there already. But I definitely thought that Caleb Williams would show more. I'll say that. I thought Caleb Williams would show more. I thought we would see him use his legs a ton more. I thought that the rapport with his receivers would be there too as well. But those things seem to be a work in progress, and we'll see what exactly what happens. props to Ben Johnson for sort of putting some of the onus on himself, and not bearing the blunt of the blame on a guy like Caleb Williams. But I'm just saying, I think that the expectation for the Chicago Bears has to be higher. It has to be higher. You spend a first overall pick on a guy that came in with a lot of hype. People saw him as generational. I didn't see him as generational, but we'll see what happens. We had a huge debate about, I want to say 2 years ago when Caleb Williams was coming out of the draft, me and my other co-host, Evan McPhillips, and I remember him, going to bat so hard for him. And it was a big discussion there. And I disagreed with him. I disagreed that Caleb Williams was this can't miss prospect. I saw flaws in his game. I saw flaws in his game at USC. I saw flaws in his game when he was at Oklahoma. And I think they're rearing its ugly head right now in the National Football League. But this is what happens when we put a lot of hype on a guy and we're not allowing them to grow. And you might say, Malik, well, you're not allowing him to grow right now. No, I'm just meeting him where everybody else thought he was at. Everybody else said generational. Everybody else said can't miss prospect. So if you're a generational, can't miss prospect, when you step foot on the football field, I'm expecting you to do the easy things very well. Checking it down to your tight ends, checking it down to your backs, taking what the defense gives you. I'm expecting that at the very least for you. Everybody doesn't have a rocket arm or a huge arm. He has that. I get why he wants to use that. He has the ability to extend plays down the field. He has that. But at the same time, I'm all for giving a young quarterback the opportunity to grow. But when the expectations are as monumental as a Caleb Williams had coming in, well, now we have to talk about the flaws. We have to magnify the flaws. Because guess what? It can't be, we'll only talk about the good things when the good things happen. No. We're going to discuss it all because this is a guy that was talked about as can't miss. This is a guy that everyone was excited about. I'm excited about Caleb Williams still. But however, we got to stop throwing can't miss generational tag on players long before they actually reach that level. We are seeing it with Arch Manning. Yeah. We saw it. The beginning of the season with Arch Manning, then we're all like, oh my God, I can't believe Arch Manning struggled the way he did. Guys, relax. I get it. His last name, I get it. I understand Caleb Williams. Everyone was excited. The sidearm throws. Oh my God, he's like Pat Mahomes when their games are not similar at all.
You don't think so?
No.
Really?
No.
You don't think their game's similar?
I think that their mechanics from a throwing standpoint is similar, but you know who also has similar throwing mechanics as a Pat Mahomes? A guy that's been doing it longer than Pat Mahomes, and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was the first guy we've ever seen throw sidearm, but because Mahomes is Mahomes, and he has the marketability, right? And his brother's doing TikToks on the sideline and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like, we act like we've never seen this stuff before. It's a disrespectful to Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford and Aaron Rodgers have been doing sidearm throws for years. Yeah. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful about it. I'm just being a realist about it. We crown these guys and, oh my God, he's throwing sidearm. We've never seen anybody do that. Now, guess what? We're seeing a bunch of guys throw sidearm. Does that make them generational? No. But that's why people were putting their games together, because Caleb was throwing from all these weird angles, but Caleb is more athletic. Caleb is faster. Now, I get it. Mahomes has started to use his legs more and more during the last few years of his career. But I felt like Patrick Mahomes in the beginning of his career was more of a statue. He was kind of like, he was moving off of platform and stuff like that, but he wasn't really using his legs to run. But then again, he didn't have to. You had the weapons like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce in his prime. You had all this stuff working for you. But for me, just because a guy throws sidearm does not make him generational. To me, if you could tell me where you think their games are similar, I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, I think that actually the games are very similar. Okay, I think the criticisms that at least I know we've talked about, and I've had it with Mahomes is, hey, like, this is a guy who's always put the ball in harm's way. This is a guy who's going for the deep shot. This is a guy who's willing to go out there and, put the play, put the game on the line. And we've seen it, especially early in Patrick Mahomes' career. And I thought that was something that we saw early in Caleb Williams, at least last year, to where he was doing that, right? He was taking these deep shots. And I think the biggest concerns that, like I said, I've had with this guy is, hey, it's taking the easy stuff. And that's something I saw with him last week. And I think that was one of the biggest areas of growth was, hey, he was taking the easy stuff. He was taking the dump downs, the dump offs to the running back. DeAndre Swift had like 4, 5, 6 targets. But that's my biggest concern with them, is taking those easy stuff. And that's why I think they were very similar. I think that their ability to, escape the pocket, that's something we've seen Mahomes kill teams on time and time again. I thought Caleb Williams has showed that his entire career. So I think from the athleticism standpoint, I think they're similar to where they're not overly reliant on their legs, but they utilize it, especially on those third downs. And I think it's something where I don't see either of these guys going through 1, 2, 3 reads and then, just stay in the pocket they're always trying to get outside of the pocket. And I think that's, like I said, that's my biggest flaw with Mahomes, has always been, hey, this guy wasn't taking the easy stuff early in his career. He was always trying to push the ball down the field. And Caleb Williams, I thought, is somewhat similar. So, yeah, I do think that their games are very similar in the standpoint that, hey, they're both uber athletic, and they both – it's not like they're using their legs. It's not like their offense coordinator saying, hey, design quarterback run. But it's, hey, both those guys, third down, 1, 2 reads, they're escaping the pocket. I think they both got the little bit of quickness. Obviously, Caleb's a little quicker, but yeah, I do think that the games are very similar, to be honest.
I'm so happy that you brought up what you saw from Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
Let me push back on that for a degree. You talked about how he looked so great throwing down to his running backs in the beginning, taking the easy stuff. Well, I'll admit, I was impressed. He did that in the beginning of the game, which is why the prop that I gave out, DeAndre Swift, to have over 2.5 receptions, hit. Ask me when he went back to him. 0. Didn't happen again. He threw to a guy like 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏, who the Bears have extended, right?
Yep.
A guy like Colston Loveland. He didn't throw to Colston Loveland again until the last drive in which they had the ball.
Yeah.
Colston Loveland finished that game with 2 receptions and 12 yards. This is the guy that they drafted to be their Sam Laporta, right? Then you got 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏, who had 1 reception in the entire game, albeit pretty big reception, 31 yards. Never saw the ball again. You see what I'm saying here? To me, those things that you just said happened, but happened early in the game and never happened again. A quarterback that's a first overall pick and is generational. Well, it happens more times than just one time when it's – and go figure.
Yeah.
The Bears offense looked functioning when it was happening.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen again. Let's not act like it did.
It did. It did.
Didn't happen
He
again.
targeted 𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗏 in the end zone, and he got rocked.
In the end zone. Okay.
And he got rocked, and that was for the penalty. He did. And I agree with you on the standpoint. I'm totally agreeing with you that he looked like 2 different quarterbacks from the beginning of the game to the end of the game.
That's what I'm saying.
I agree.
But it could all I'm saying, right? Because we watched the same game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But could it be because he stopped doing the easy things?
Yeah.
Because he was looking to take deep shots down the field.
But I think Mahomes does the same thing. That's what I think. I think he does.
No. Have you heard of Noah Gray?
I have.
Have you heard of Travis Kelce?
Yeah.
Right? That guy has granted, he's made a living throwing to his tight ends.
Yeah.
He has. He's made a living up until recently throwing to his running backs. Now he's been using his legs more often. Ever since Travis Kelce doesn't look like Travis Kelce anymore, and they no longer have a speed demon like Tyreek Hill down the field.
Yeah.
Well, guess what we're seeing with Pat Mahomes now? We're seeing chinks in his armor, right? He's dealing with receivers who deal with separation issues, not name Xavier Worthy or Hollywood Brown, who has drop issues, right? So now what we're seeing is more chinks in his armor when things just don't come easy to him. Travis Kelce is no longer in his prime. But when he was always checking it down to his tight ends. He was always checking it down to his running backs. Listen, Pat Mahomes to have over to throw his running back for 2.5 receptions was easy money. That was stealing. That was happening every single week. But what I'm saying is it's not happening anymore. So if you want to say that their games are similar now, maybe, because guess what? Caleb isn't taking the easy things. But Pat Mahomes, to his credit, he still tries to look for his tight ends. Yeah. He still tries to look for guys to dump it off to. To me, it was just weird. It was a tale of 2 halves. It was a quarterback that was willing to take what the defense gave him, and then it was a quarterback that just wanted to just air it out downfield. And I think that's why we saw the struggles that we saw, because you gave more time for Brian Flores' defense to adjust, to get to him, to start. But there were guys open in the flats. I'm not going to sit up here and say there wasn't. I know that's not what you're saying either. Yeah. There were guys open in the flats, man. So I think he bears a large part of this blame, because you can't look like one quarterback in the first half and then completely change your DNA and change exactly who you were, giving your guys opportunities. I think this game would have been a lot closer had he been checking it down to his tight ends, had he been checking down to his backs more often, and not just in the red zone. Taking what the defense gives you, being smart about it. That's what I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I agree with you. I just think that all around, I think that Caleb Williams, like he didn't look like a great quarterback in the second half, and that's something they do have to figure this out. Like they've got to figure it out, whatever that be, because they looked very, very good. And I think the biggest concern that I've got, like you said, is you have to, whether it's on Caleb Williams or on Ben Johnson, you've got to get your guys involved. And I agree. The one guy I thought that wasn't involved that should have been was Colson Loveland. Like so I thought that they got DJ Moore involved. I loved how he was in the backfield. They got him in a couple screens. Same thing with the 𝗦𝗣𝗢𝗟𝗧. They tried a couple screens. I thought that that's, like I said, I thought that that's what they were doing very well. But they just didn't give their guys a whole lot of chance, and they've got to figure that out. Like the best play they had was the red zone play, the fake run, the little bootleg to the left, and where he scored the touchdown at the end of the game. It made the offense look extremely easy. You gave them two very simple reads, made the defense pick. You're either going to the flat or you're picking the tight end. It went to the flat, wide open touchdown. Yeah. You've got to do more of that. So I will also say they have a very tough schedule upcoming. So they've got to figure this out quick.
Oh yeah. They definitely got to figure it out. And here's the one issue I'll say. I just make sure I looked up just to make sure I verified what I was saying. Colson Loveland, 2 receptions. Ask me how many targets he had that game.
Probably 2.
2.
Yeah.
That's my point.
But it's also Colson Loveland, and that's what I don't know. Like I look at what they were doing. They were throwing a lot of screens. They were throwing a lot of stuff in the short yard. So for me, that's where I think it's like
the holding the ball issue that we talked about when he was at USC. Reared his ugly head again.
Yes, I agree.
You're going to give defenses an opportunity to hone in on you. You're going to give defenses an opportunity to just collapse. And Mike, I feel so sorry because you're like sitting there quiet where you just see us going at each other right now. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that there's a lot here.
Yes.
First off, when it's a new system, and like you said, Malik, you have to hold them accountable to some degree. But perhaps I'm just making excuses. Perhaps,
maybe you're an offensive guy, so
perhaps, but I do want to give him the benefit of the doubt here. First off, it is on Caleb to a degree. I think as we saw the game move along, you were talking about it. He's not trusting his reads as much. He's not really working through the progressions. He's looking to extend plays. I do think part of that is once you get out of those scripted plays, those first 15 plays of the game, he's less comfortable in the new system. And also, I touched on it earlier, but I think you have to couple that with the fact that he was facing a Brian Flores defense.
Yes.
He is going to throw everything at you. He's going to throw the kitchen sink at you, especially for a season opener when he has months and months to prepare for this. He knows what he's getting in a Ben Johnson offense, having seen him in Detroit, and he knows what he's getting in Caleb Williams, having faced him before. So I think Brian Flores came into this game very prepared. Like you said, I would have liked to see him you guys talked about Colson Loveland. I would have liked to see them getting the ball to Luther Burden on some design looks as well. He was an absolute yak monster at Missouri, really, really good with the ball in his hands with space. And I think once things kind of started to unravel in the second half, would have liked to see Burden get a touch near the line of scrimmage to just see what he can do with the ball, to get the rhythm back flowing into the offense, see what they can do, and just try and get things back on track. I mean, we can say ifs, ands, and buts all we want about it, but I do really just think it's a mix of everything. Caleb Williams obviously didn't look he didn't look up to snuff. He didn't play like you would want him to. But at the end of the day, like I said, there's a lot of factors working against him here where you can make excuses. I don't want to jump to any egregious conclusions after just 1 week with a bunch of new pieces at play, with a new offensive play caller in the mix. So I like what I saw, and it's fair to have concerns. I'm not really going to take an aggressive take either way, but there's a path for things to either really, really work out, or you can also see this blowing up.
Well, I'm happy that you won't, because I'm here, so you two don't have to. I'm here because guess what? At the end of the day, I believe and I stand on business. I say I believe in everything that I say, and I've been one of the biggest critics of this generational can't miss prospect bullshit. That's how I feel. And guess what? Now we're like, hey, not you, Mike, necessarily, not even you, Daniel, but people, hey, let's take it easy on the guy. Let's take it easy on the guy. Let's see, hey. Okay, I'm all fine with that. But can we all agree not generational? Can we all agree can't miss? Not can't miss? I don't think that's egregious what I'm saying. I don't think that's aggressive in what I'm saying either. I think that's a very practical statement. I think I'm basing that off of a year of body work and how he's looked in the beginning of the season. He showed a lot of promise in the first half. Looked like a completely different quarterback in the second half. The great ones adjust. I'm not saying that's going to be his final story, but at this point in time, not that generational, not that can't miss prospect that everyone talked about him being. Is that a fair statement?
No, I completely agree. And I brought the hammer down on Caleb Williams this offseason. What he did last year was pretty awful in terms of just how he looked on the field as a processor. And I touched on that earlier.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were willing to hand wave that away just because of Matt Eberflus, the coaching staff, everything kind of going awry. But as I talked about, I think he really improved in that aspect of his game. So I'm willing to hold out hope, but I think it's completely understandable.
Thank you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Completely understandable.
I mean, I get you. I'm with you on the generational. I'm totally with
That's
you.
all, and that's all I'm saying.
Because
Absolute cinema. That's all I'm saying.
But I don't think I'm not gonna write off was he worthy of the number one overall?
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I didn't say that. But Bears fans and people were pointing to people's graves and all this stuff like that and saying, we're moving off him. We got this guy. I want to go from one Bears quarterback to the guy that the Bears gave up on. The guy that the Bears fans told me Caleb Williams was so much better than. Let's talk about Justin Fields.
Mm-hmm.
Let's have that conversation. Well, are you a believer in Justin Fields, Daniel? That's the conversation that I want to have today. Make no mistake about it. I think Caleb Williams is a better passer than Justin Fields, but I also think that they're where they were at their point in time when they got drafted. I'm sorry, they didn't get drafted together, but when Caleb came in the league and Justin was still with the Bears, I felt like it was not that far off. I understand the expectation was going to be, well, Caleb is going to uplift our offense to this prolific offense and stuff like that, but I just felt like Justin Fields was such a weapon, so dynamic, and I felt like he was kind of giving up on a little bit early, but he's gone. He's no longer a Chicago Bear. Let's talk about it. Are you a believer in Justin Fields with the Jets? Daniel?
I mean, it depends on what the context is. I think he's fine. I think he's unique. He's different. And I think with a team like the Jets, he definitely impressed from the standpoint, hey, you gave him a 2-year contract. It's not like you gave him a 4-year contract. And I think that this is, at least right now, it's giving you some sort of hope. And I still think he's young enough to where he could be successful. But I'm not fully bought in on, is he the answer? Is he the guy? But it would also be wrong of me just to completely dismiss him right now. I mean, so often in the NFL, at least from my perspective, when we look at quarterbacks, I've always been kind of a pushback on the rushing ability at times, saying, hey, well, they're a great rusher, but are they able to do the easy things well? At some point, you have to give them credit where credit is due. This dude had 2 rushing touchdowns, and whichever way we slice it, it helped out their football team. Is it fully sustainable for 16 games for 3 NFL seasons? Maybe not. But it is something that you have to game plan around. And I think with the performance that they had against the Pittsburgh Steelers, I do think that he is playing his ass off, especially when you look at he's got one truly capable wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. You look at the rest of these teams in the NFL. I mean, hell, you look at the Chicago Bears. They've got guys, Colson Loveland, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. If you give Justin Fields more weapons, hell, this might work out. But I'm definitely going to at least push back. Obviously, they had 32 points. Everybody's already crowning him, saying he's the next this, he's the next that. But I do think that there is a real world where he shows up this season. They have a very solid, productive season, whether that's 8, 9 wins. I would view that as a highly productive season for a new head coach, for a new GM. So I'm a fan of Justin Fields now. I think that it's something that you have to give him credit for. And it's not like you're buying in saying this dude is their future. It's not like, hey, you're even saying we're not going to draft a quarterback in this year's draft class. Like, you're giving him a shot. Let's see how he does. And I think that his rushing ability is really what makes him this X factor and really what gives him the potential to be the Jets starter for the next 3 to 4 years is because of his rushing ability. But I also think that he surprised me as a passer. He looked very good as a passer, but I'm not fully bought in on him as a passer, but he surprised me.
One thing I want to touch on before Mike goes is, I think it's important to have this conversation. I think that you talked about, you didn't want to rate necessarily the rushing ability early on of quarterbacks. My pushback is Michael Vick, right? My pushback on that is Lamar Jackson, right? And what I mean by that is sometimes you've got to just use these guys to their strengths, right?
Totally.
Until they start to make the climb in their passing, right? The passing ability starts to come together with their ability to take over a game with their legs. Lamar Jackson, early on, he didn't take the strides as a passer that he has right now, which is why people, for whatever reason, which was stupid, gave him that running back tag. But now you see him, his ability to take shots down the field, his ability to work the intermediate part of his game, it's there. It's there. And now we're looking at Lamar Jackson. I feel like everyone's has a different tone to Lamar Jackson's game now versus the one that they had a few years back. Justin Fields was just never given the opportunity to mature within the team because he's always been in these settings in which you're on the hot seat, right? It felt like from the time he took over with the Bears, he was on the hot seat. Remember, he didn't start off as a starter. Andy Dalton did, right? It was like he was forced to be in there. I forgot even the coach's name now. He's the Dallas Cowboys defense coordinator, right? Matt Eberflus, right?
The man.
But, you look at it, I'm cool with meeting these guys where they are. Just understand when you draft a guy, make sure you're going to build a structure around him in which he could have success. Don't be in a situation in which you're drafting a guy because you feel pressured or you feel forced to draft a guy because of where he is. And I felt like that's what the Bears organization were at. They felt like they needed to make a move. They felt like, here we go. And then they finally drafted him. And then they didn't give him a fair shake, to be honest with you. And he goes to the Steelers, and Steelers also add Russell Wilson. And then it's like, of course, Russell Wilson is going to beat out Justin Fields. What? He's the veteran. He won a Super Bowl, the whole 9 yards. Well, he didn't look terrible with the Steelers last year.
He had a winning record.
He just didn't get a lot of shots. Now the Jets, what did they sign him to? A 2-year deal?
2-year, 40
They're giving him a chance to prove that he could be a guy for them. Justin Fields is young enough to where I feel like we have not seen the full scope of his game. That is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you, and I think the biggest point that like you made that I'm excited for is the rushing ability. Like you said, it's the same thing with Anthony Richardson and the Colts. I understand why and their thought process right now because obviously psyching your job's on the line. But if you draft the guy and one of his best abilities is to run the ball, you've got to make it a focal point, especially in today's NFL. I mean, you look at Lamar, you look at Josh Allen, you look at all the great quarterbacks right now. Hell, even Joe Burrow, his ability to get outside of the pocket. Patrick Mahomes, like these guys are winning games in big moments with their legs. And I'm totally with you. I think that is his X factor. And I think that is what makes him potentially the Jets guy for the next couple seasons. And like I said, he has 2 rushing touchdowns. And when you look at both of those, they broke the game open in certain moments, and they were needed. So
I'm pretty closely aligned with you guys here. I'm really happy that the Jets are doing what they're doing with Justin Fields. Like you talked about, just accentuating his strong points. With the Steelers last year, they were asking him to operate within the guardrails of the system. They were effectively asking him to be a game manager out there. And that's not what Justin Fields is there to do. He's there to use his legs and to operate within the flow of the game, take what he sees, try to extend plays, try to make a big play happen. He's not there. Obviously, to some degree, you want him to execute the system, but he's not there to work through his progressions. He's there to be a playmaker. He's there to be a difference maker. And that's just not what he was doing in Pittsburgh. And finally, Tanner Engstrand coming over from Detroit, they finally found someone to pair up with Justin Fields, who is just asking him to do what he's good at. And that's not what he's been asked to do over the last couple of years, especially in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a complete mess. So I'm happy that that's what they're doing. But what we saw on Sunday, I just don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it's something that we're going to see over the long term. I don't think Justin Fields is a franchise quarterback. And you talk about what Lamar Jackson did, kind of rounding out his game, becoming a truly, truly elite passer. I just don't see that path with Justin Fields. So
he hasn't been. Part of me saying that was he wasn't given the time to properly mature within an offense. It was just too much changing in and out, too much getting benched off of a bad performance. Could you imagine if the Ravens did that with Lamar Jackson? He probably wouldn't be who he is. I think a large part of successful quarterbacks, is where you land, right? And are you going to be given the time to mature? And I get it. Some guys have it, some guys don't. Could be the difference of, a Lamar Jackson, a Justin Fields, or even a damn near a Trey Lance, right?
Yeah.
These guys get drafted because they are talented. They are talented to some degree. That's why you are in the National Football League. But are you in a situation, are you surrounded by people that are going to give you the time to mature, to become this passer or this quarterback that they hope they could be. Who dictates what a franchise quarterback is? I don't know nowadays. A franchise quarterback could be anywhere who starts for 5 years to 8 years in the National Football League, or 5 to, to some cases, 20 years, right? You just don't know what is, with the National Football League or where you wind up. But I don't love the statement, Mike, of I don't see him as a franchise quarterback. I get it. I get why you say that, but I think that the jury should still be out to a degree.
He's in an optimal situation, in my opinion. He's going to have every opportunity to put his full skill set on display.
Yes.
I just don't think that what we saw on Sunday, obviously it's not the expectation.
Yeah.
But I just don't think a high-end Jets offense holding up over the course of the season, or in 2 seasons even, is something that we're going to see, led by Justin Fields. And it's the perfect situation. I just don't think it's something that'll work out long term, just because of his deficiencies as a passer. It was a lot better than what I expected, what anyone could have expected on Sunday, but I'm still not sold.
And one thing I'll say is, if I'm the Jets organization, I'm saying, hey, you got this young guy at quarterback, Justin Fields. I'm making a move for a wide receiver now. I'm doing this before the trade deadline.
Who's giving up a wide receiver though?
There's a couple teams. I think the Colts would. The Colts, they've got Alec Pierce. I think he would be the guy. But I agree. There's probably not of elite guys, but for me, I just look at it and I agree with the sustainable part, because they've got Garrett Wilson. They've got Mason Taylor, who's the rookie tight end. But besides that, literally, Wilson had 7 receptions. Nobody else had more than 2. And that's my concern is, hey, I think that if they want to succeed this season, you've got to go out and get a guy. And maybe if he has a good season, you go out and you spend your first-round pick on next year's wide receiver, whether it's Jordan Tyson or one of these other guys. And maybe
let's give him Ohio State's name.
𝗪𝗏𝗪. Maybe you go out there and get, I don't think they were ever aligned on the same team, but go out and get 𝗪𝗏𝗪, and maybe that's the mark. But for me, that would be my biggest concern this season is, hey, he ain't got a whole lot to throw to. And you knock on wood, but 12 rushing attempts a game, I don't know if that's fully sustainable. And like I said, he needs help from his other weapons outside of Garrett Wilson.
We'll see what happens. We're definitely mixed with Justin Fields and his potential with the Jets. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I want to keep the conversation moving forward. I was gonna talk about the Bengals offense. We'll get to that. But before we do, it would not be a Friday if we didn't have Fantasy Football Fridays here at TWSN. We've got Michael here, obviously, in studio, but we missed last week. We missed in a big way because Bradshaw wasn't here, the other half of the law firm. So without further ado, we want to bring in Steve Bradshaw joining us for Fantasy Football Fridays here on the Sit Down Morning Show. What's going on, Steve? How we doing?
Not too bad. Just get to start my morning hearing you guys rip on my quarterback and praise Justin Fields. But besides that, excited to talk fantasy.
Steve, I promise you, this was not planned. I completely forgot you were a Chicago Bears.
The first 2 segments are directly aligned.
Pain, right? Pain.
So much.
Literally. But listen, it's Fantasy Football Fridays. I'm going to let Daniel take this one away.
Awesome. All right. So what we kind of been doing, Steve, and you obviously know the drill. We're going to go and you guys will give probably 2 of your favorite starts this week and 2 of your favorite guys that you're looking to fade this week. And we'll start with you, Steve, since you're online. Then we'll go to Mike. You guys just kind of go back and forth.
Cool. Yeah. One of my favorite starts this week is going back to the Jets. I really like Breece Hall. I thought he passed the week 1 test with flying colors. Not only in terms of how he looked on the field, but he got the workload that people were kind of hesitant about all offseason. He had 19 carries, 4 targets, 2 receptions. If he's touching the ball 20 times a game, which I don't think is unreasonable at all because, again, like you guys are talking about, they have Justin Fields running the ball. They have Garrett Wilson. They have Mason Taylor. That is it. They need to get Breece Hall involved in a big way if they want their offense to be, performing at a high level or even half sustainable. So Breece Hall, I think, has shown everything that I need him to. He has a pretty solid matchup against the Bills. I think it should be decently high scoring, and they're probably going to be throwing the ball a decent bit, but The thing with Hall is he doesn't need 20 carries to be great in fantasy. He can benefit from getting those checkdowns from Justin Fields, getting in the red zone when they're throwing the ball a lot. So I really like Hall this week.
My running back start of the week, it's a little bit nittier grittier. It's Dylan Sampson from the Cleveland Browns. I really think if you're in a pinch, you can rely on him here. I know 𝗦𝗙𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗪 is back at practice, but I don't expect him to be involved in his first NFL game, especially after not really being with the team throughout the offseason. And then last week against the Cincinnati Bengals, we saw really encouraging usage out of Sampson. He was out-snapped by Jerome Ford, but a lot of those snaps from Ford were kind of those empty calorie snaps, not really receiving a touch. They really just don't prioritize getting him involved in the offense. Meanwhile, we saw Dylan Sampson run 14 routes. He earned 8 targets on those routes. That's not a sustainable rate, but I really do think it's a clear indication that they want this guy involved in the passing game. And against the Baltimore Ravens, I don't have the spread up in front of me, but I can guarantee you it's at least a touchdown. And we just expect a trailing game script here for the Browns. A lot of opportunities for Sampson to get involved in the pass game. I don't really think this is like an opportunity where you're going to see a guy where you're expecting him to fall into the end zone or anything like that, but just kind of PPR scam your way, as they say, into a meaningful fantasy performance. Perhaps we know he has the explosivity to rip off a big one. So perhaps he takes one of those checkdowns into a 20, 30, 40-yard play. But I just do think the passing volume is there for you to get by in fantasy if you're in a pinch at running back this week.
All right. You said PPR scam your way through. Steve, give us another one of your favorite starts for the week.
Yeah, I'll actually go with another Brown, and this one is a bit deeper. I'm a really big Harold Fanning guy. I don't know. I think we talked about this with Mike, Daniel earlier. I was a huge fan of him in the NFL draft. And in week 1, he had a record-breaking first game. I believe he had 63 receptions, tied Tyler Warren, actually, for the most catches in a game as well. And like you said, Mike, it's going to be a very positive game script for these pass catchers. Though the Browns aren't really going to have any shot to win the game because, they're taking the Ravens. I think the spread's like 11. They're 11-point underdogs.
No Joe Flacco revenge game? What?
I don't know. I don't think it's going to be looking too good for the Browns, but I think that the Browns are going to be throwing the ball a ton. So it's going to be a lot of, Mike said PPR scam for Dylan Sampson. There's going to be a lot of garbage time passing volume. And I think Fannin, who is used heavily in that first game and has a very, creative and unique skill set, the Browns using him in the way that he needs to be used is all that I need to see. I think I'm all in on Fannin. I think he is a locked-in top 10 tight end for me every single week, especially in a good matchup.
All right, so we see the questions. We're going to get to them in a second. Mike, give us your other favorite start, and then we'll get to the questions in one set.
Yeah, my wide receiver start for the week is Hollywood Brown, Chiefs receiver. We weren't supposed to be here, but we're here. It's just really, really unfortunate. I don't want to be telling people to start Hollywood Brown, but that's just what fantasy football is. You got to adapt. And the fact of the matter is that Xavier Worthy's practicing, in air quotes. I don't buy it. I mean, unless I have a fundamental misunderstanding of what a separated shoulder is, a dislocated shoulder, this guy's not going to be on the field this week. I'm no doctor, but just knowing how long those injuries have knocked out guys before, I don't think we should be expecting to see Xavier Worthy back on the field this week. And last week, with Xavier Worthy out for basically the entire game, all but 3 snaps, we saw Hollywood Brown earn 16 targets, top 5 wide receiver in terms of expected fantasy points. And he's clearly outplaying Travis Kelce in terms of a target earnings perspective. So I don't think Andy Reid wants to be doing this. Neither do we as fantasy managers, but the passing attack could very well run through Hollywood Brown in week 2. So I just think based on volume, this is a guy you have to be sliding into your lineup. You probably grabbed him really, really late in your draft, and maybe you even picked him up off the waiver wire. But for the time being, this is a clear wide receiver 2, and perhaps your team is good enough that it's a flex play. But either way, you should be getting this guy into your lineup this week.
All right, so we had 2 questions about Travis Etienne. What's your guys' quick thoughts? We have from Nofo Joe said, the Panthers look like they might be a horrible run defense again, but can Travis Etienne repeat his performance? And Liam asked the question about, do you think that Etienne's going to put up 15-plus fantasy points a game? Steve, what's your quick thoughts?
I'm not really a big Travis Etienne believer. He looked great in week 1. So I think it would be irresponsible to say, oh, there's no way he's going to repeat this. Like, I don't really feel good about starting him. I would start him, and I think you have to, at least as an RB2 going forward, because he did look great. He was a very good prospect. He's had very good years of his NFL career. But would it shock me if he kind of just, tapered down and wasn't the same 15 point per guy like going forward? No, I think this week he can repeat that, and I think the hype will be, more than what he's probably worth. But rest of the season, I see Travis Etienne as I don't think he's going to go to the extreme and just completely fall off or, repeat the great season he was having. I see him as like a 12, 13 point per game running back. I think he'll be a fine RB2, but I'm not going to go too heavily, one way or the other.
Yeah, similar to what Steve said, I just think it would be irresponsible to completely lean into what he did last week. Like the commenter said, this last year was a historically bad run defense from the Panthers, and we saw ETN carve him up last week. So fully banking on that to be what he's going to do throughout the season. I don't think anyone is, but it would be irresponsible from you as a fantasy manager. But for the time being, this is a must-start guy. We see Tank Bigsby traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think that opens the door for Travis Etienne to just take over the vast majority of the workload, at least for the time being. I do think 𝗕𝗚𝗓𝗏 is someone who should be stashed on benches in leagues everywhere, 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues, basically every league bigger than 10 teams. He should be a bench stash because we don't know how this is going to shake out over the course of the season. I really do think that there is very much a world where Travis Etienne either sputters, or last year we saw him consistently dealing with injuries. I think that could happen again. So there's room for 𝗕𝗚𝗓𝗏 to carve out a real role in this backfield. I know there was a tweet going around in the fantasy circle about 𝗕𝗚𝗓𝗏 being the new Bucky Irving. I don't know. Bucky Irving, he wasn't relevant until the back half of the season. So for the time being, he's a very, very clear starter in your lineup. And if you snatched him up in the 10th round, the 11th round, wherever you may have grabbed him, just fist pump it in right now. Be happy about it. You got a guy in the mid to late rounds who is a clear starter. But if it wouldn't be smart to be banking on this to be for him to deliver consistent RB2 production for 17 straight weeks.
For sure. So let's get to one of you guys' sits for the week. So Steve, who's a matchup that you are just not a fan of for this week?
Yeah, I just really don't like Tony Pollard. I get the argument. People are saying, oh, he's getting all the volume. Oh, Tyjae Spears is out. And at, price where people are starting him as an RB2, I think he's being ranked as like a mid-end RB2 to late RB2 in a lot of other people's consensus rankings. They're playing the Rams. I think the Rams are a good team. They didn't look, fantastic against the Texans, but I expect them to have a much better week 2 and kind of run away with this game, which, is going to cause the Titans to have to throw the ball a lot. Tony Pollard isn't necessarily a big component in the receiving game. Last week, he only had one target, which was a big play for 29 yards. But we saw him get 18 carries last week, and he still had 7.9 points. His rushing efficiency was also really bad, 3.3 yards per carry. He's an older back. It's not like he has a ton of juice left at 28 years old. I'm just not a fan of Tony Pollard unless the Titans play an absolutely terrible team, and there's an actual chance that they can be in the game most of the time and run the ball a lot. But between Cam Ward only having a second NFL game, between the matchup being pretty bad and Tony Pollard also not looking great in week 1, I'm out on him this week. I'm finding another option as my RB2.
Yeah, personally, for me, I'm hand-waving the week 1 performance from Tony Pollard, just given the matchup. I think he's going to be a fine, volume-driven RB2 moving forward. I do want to throw it out there. One of my other sits that I had down was Calvin Ridley. I'm not going to get too deep into that, but just the matchup against this defensive line and the horrific Titans offensive line, I'd be sitting him. But the guy I did want to talk about is Aaron Jones, Minnesota Vikings running back. He got there last week thanks to a long wheel route touchdown out of the backfield, really saved his game from a fantasy perspective. But the reality of the situation is that I just don't know if there's going to be enough there for Aaron Jones to get it done week to week. In week 1, we saw Aaron Jones outsnapped and outcarried by Jordan Mason. Anyone who sat down and watched that game could say that Mason looked like the far superior rusher of the football. It was like 5 a carry with this guy who was consistently picking up chunk plays. Aaron Jones is still going to have access to the receiving work, which can help him get there in PPR leagues. Jordan Mason isn't much of a pass catcher. You should be seeing Aaron Jones for the majority of the passing downs, but the Vikings didn't have a true goal line snap. They lined up from the 3-yard line, the 2-yard line a couple of times here and there, but they did have a 2-point conversion attempt from the 1-yard line. It ended up being a play action bootleg from JJ McCarthy, but Mason was on the field. And this was what fantasy people were expecting throughout the offseason, that Mason was going to be the goal line guy. I think we got some confirmation of that in week 1, that Mason is going to get those goal line touches. So if Aaron Jones is the inferior runner going to be out carried, your only real path there is him racking up receptions. And that's just not something that I think is going to be sustainable in a run first passing or a run first offense like we're expecting to see in Minnesota. So we'll see if he can get it done on passing volume. But what I saw in week 1 just wasn't very encouraging.
For sure. So let's get to 2 questions real quick, and then we'll get our fantasy guys out of here. We had G. Lou and James O'Hara both asked about the New England Patriots. Stefon Diggs and Drake May. What's your guys' thoughts on this matchup?
You can feel it here, Steve.
Yeah, I think that it's a good matchup. If you have Diggs, I feel fine about starting him if you drafted him as your flex. I don't love it. Diggs is a guy that I would rather, see him kind of prove it first, where week 1 obviously wasn't great. Drake May, on the other hand, I was a really big fan of coming in, between his rushing upside, between how, obviously a very highly regarded prospect. Now, if you drafted Drake May to be your quarterback 1 and, you're waiting to see if maybe there's another quarterback you want off the waivers, you have to give him one more shot against, the Dolphins this week. I think he's going to should have low QB1 expectations, but if he doesn't at least finish as a top 10 quarterback this week, you're right. I think you have to start him this week. If he doesn't perform, it might not be looking great for the rest of the season, but Diggs, I think, is a fine play. I would avoid him if you can, though. Drake May, I feel like you kind of have to put him in if you drafted him.
Yeah, I'm a little bit in a bit of a disagreement there with Steve on Stefon Diggs. We knew he was coming back from the ACL injury, and it's clearly impacting him to begin the season, at least from a usage perspective. Stefon Diggs was in a full-blown rotation with the other receivers in New England last week. His route participation was not where you'd want it to be, only 40 of 71 snaps, and he really wasn't consistently used in 2 wide receiver sets last week. He was getting out there for the most of the 3 wide receiver sets, but he's clearly still ramping up from that injury, and I would fully expect him to be a full-time player down the stretch this season, but it's a rotation for now, and it's a kind of thing where I'm not going to be trusting that in my lineup until I see it first. So until the deployment for Stefon Diggs improves, I don't think I'll have him touching my lineup, especially just considering we don't know what he's going to fully look like. I know the stat line was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't horrible, but he still showed a little bit of signs to me on film that he had lost a step to a degree. We know he's an aging receiver coming off of a significant injury. So there's just a lot going on there to make me get off of Stefon Diggs. But on the other hand, I agree with Steve on Drake May. He's absolutely got to be in your lineup. We just saw this Indianapolis Colts defense get torched, or this Miami Dolphins defense get torched by the Indianapolis Colts. And they're down another cornerback. Storm Duck, their starting outside corner, is out. It's just a disaster. I don't think that this is a defense that is going to be able to stop virtually anyone this season. Drake May is a must start. I know it was a little bit underwhelming, but I really do think this is where we see the Patriots offense get rolling, and Drake May really, really display the upside that fantasy managers and just people who are NFL fans were banking on him to show in his second season.
All right. Well, listen, I tell you this every week, Steve. I am not a fantasy guy at all, but I promised I would sprinkle in some fantasy football knowledge this week. And maybe I'm doing it because my good friend, my birthday buddy, is on the chat today. But I'm ashamed of both of y'all for a second. I am. You know, I was doing some research of my own really quickly. You know, 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗓, who obviously just sat down with us on the sit-down. I promise y'all this is not a biased pick. This is me genuinely trying to help you guys right now. 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗓 is rostered in, they said 1.5 fantasy leagues. Is that the right
1%.
terminology? 1.5% fantasy leagues. I'm telling you guys right now, there was a tight end the Bengals had last season named 𝗪𝗏𝗏. Right, 𝗪𝗏𝗏 was a guy that emerged like crazy in the Bengals offense. Well, the Bengals are going to be utilizing 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢 very similar to how they used 𝗪𝗏𝗏. The production that 𝗪𝗏𝗏 saw is a similar production that I expect 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 to see. I feel like he has a bigger run after the catch ability. He put up 12 points last week in fantasy football. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just giving you guys my 2 cents. But what I can tell you is even his receiving props are down drastically. He's not expected to do much. He outsnapped Mike Gesicki last week. He got more receptions than Mike Gesicki last week. He's being used more as an inline blocker. He outsnapped Drew Sample last week for the Bengals. So this is a guy in 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 that I believe is going to be a red zone target. And I believe if you have the opportunity, again, I'm no fantasy expert. I only won 2 fantasy championships many, many moons ago. But I will say this, and I would love to get your opinions on this before we let Steve out of this. I do think picking 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 up on waivers is something that I would personally do because I think he's a guy that's starting to emerge. I think the 4 receptions that we saw him getting his debut against a tough Browns defense is only indicative of what he's going to be doing more and more as the season progresses. But those little checkdowns that Burrow likes to throw, I think Fan is going to be a huge weapon down the stretch. Just my opinion.
Personally, what I saw last week from the Cincinnati Bengals offense, I could not draw a conclusion on anyone. They just did not run enough plays.
Yeah.
The offense was sputtering out drive after drive, and the play volume was just so low that I don't think there were any valuable conclusions that we could draw in terms of how 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 is going to be utilized in this offense. I do expect him to see some of those checkdowns like you were talking about, but at the end of the day, I really do just think that this is like the vast majority of the back end startable fantasy tight ends. It's going to be a touchdown driven type of thing.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals offense, that's an offense you want to bet on to be scoring a lot of touchdowns. And I don't have the red zone numbers pulled up in front of me. Yes, 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 did lead the Bengals in terms of snaps among the pass catching tight ends. We don't really consider Drew Sample to be a pass catcher whatsoever. It's him and Gesicki.
Yeah.
Fant ran more routes, played more snaps than Mike Gesicki. So I do think he has the edge there in terms of being the guy who can be that red zone monster and haul in a bunch of touchdowns.
That's what I was going to say. I can't believe I wanted to wait before I gave my opinion on 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏. I told Daniel I wanted to see how the Bengals are going to utilize him. And if how they're utilizing right now is any indication, I genuinely believe he's probably going to be good for a touchdown each week because his Bengals team is going to be in the offense, is going to be in the red zone. I can't speak to what his reception count is going to be each and every single week, but I definitely think this is a guy that's I think he's going to have more touchdowns than Mike Gesicki too, man, just because he's seen the football field more. I think over time, Gesicki, the receptions might obviously overtake 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏, and obviously the yards production, but I think in the red zone, I think you're going to choose 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏.
Yeah, and all I'll say is that when it comes to those kind of low-end fantasy starters, you're really just trying to throw a dart at a touchdown, and betting on the Cincinnati Bengals offense to do that is never a bad idea.
Yeah. Steve, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, obviously, I know you're a big Fant guy, but I've actually been clamoring for 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗏 for years in like my dynasty leagues. I think he's immensely talented. So like Mike said, you're after the top tight ends, you're just looking for a guy that could potentially score a touchdown that week. Fant fits the bill, exactly. And I think that he is more talented and could get involved as a pass catcher, each week than a lot of people really realize because of, relative to expectations of being a first-round pick coming out of Iowa, didn't necessarily live up to the hype with the Seahawks, considering they did release him. So Fant, I'm a big fan of him. If you're throwing a dart, you need a tight end to fill in your lineup. You're just cycling through the waivers. I really don't think there's many better dart throws. So I love that call from you, Malik. I think that's a great one.
Thank you. And last thing I'll say on that is I I predicted Mike Gesicki's emergence in the Bengals offense. And this is not me talking from a fan. This is me just saying this. I think Noah Fant is uber talented. And I think the only reason why he was cut from the Seattle Seahawks was because they didn't want to pay the price tag. Remember, they just extended the guy. They didn't want to pay the price tag and the emergence of a tight end that they like in Elijah Arroyo. I think that is the only reason why that guy was cut. It had nothing to do with talent. It had nothing to do with skill. It came down to that was a financial decision. And I think as the season progresses, I think Noah Fant is going to reestablish his value in the National Football League. And I think a lot of teams are going to be trying to knock down that guy's door, trying to sign him in the offseason. That's just my expectation. But Steve, thank you so much for joining us for another episode, man, of the Sit Down Morning Show. We look forward to talking with you each and every single Friday, along with Mike, the law firm, back in action, giving their fantasy football takes. I don't know if I've seen you guys disagree too much on your fantasy takes, but man, that was interesting to see. I'm not in fantasy football. I'm retired. I am happily retired in fantasy football. I flirted with the idea of coming back, but I listen to these guys because they tend to know what they're talking about. Appreciate you, Steve. Hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope that you enjoy your football weekend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, my man. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Steve.
That was Steve Bradshaw. We appreciate him for joining us. He's got a big matchup this week, man. Bears taking on the Detroit Lions, right?
They have a tough schedule, man.
Matchup. That's a big matchup. We'll see. We'll see who wants revenge on who, right? We'll see. We'll see exactly how that game pans out. I won't try to beat up on the Bears too much more because we've done enough of that on the show. I want to get to our favorite bets for week 2 before we jump to Bengals topic, and then we'll be having our guy Evan Theo Harris, lead major journalist here at TWS, Evan Theo Harris, talking UFC with us and getting his picks. And I'm curious to see if me and him are going to be going head to head again. But let's talk some of our favorite week 2 best bets. I could tell you guys right now, just want to throw this out here. As the tight end whisperer, okay, I've got some plays that I like. Some of it I low-key kind of want to save for the Patreon. But I like Mike Gesicki over 2.5 receptions. That's sitting at plus 320. I think that is a very, very good. I'm sorry, not plus 320. That's sitting at plus 120, I believe it is. Noah Fant over 2.5 receptions is a play that I like as well. I even like Noah Fant to get 4 receptions in this game, Daniel. That's sitting at plus 225. But there is a play that I absolutely love. Brenton Strange over 4 receptions. The Bengals have proven that they can't guard the tight end position. And until they show me otherwise, I will keep hammering the opposing tight ends that they face. So Brenton Strange over 3.5 receptions is sitting at plus money. Listen, Noah Fant to score a touchdown. Last week, I told you guys it was sitting at, when we did the show, it was sitting at plus 750. It closed at plus 1100. It hit. I'm going to wait until Sunday morning to see what it closes at. But sitting at it right now is sitting at plus 500. It's sitting at plus 500. And I think that is a play that I'm willing to sprinkle again. If you're looking to take Mike Gesicki to score a touchdown against the Jacksonville Jaguars, that is sitting at plus 320. So you're going to be able to get some plays. 2 other tight ends that I really, really like, Colson Loveland over 2.5 receptions. I do think that the Bears will start to target him. And Sam Laporte over 4.5 receptions. I think he's going to be heavily featured in the Lions offense this upcoming week. But those are my favorite tight end plays that I love. I'll say the rest of my touchdown scores. I expect another good week from Bijan Robinson. I expect Kyle Pitts to emerge. He seems to be one of the favorites of Michael Penix. So if you're a Kyle Pitts believer, I'm sure that makes you very, very excited to see what he might do. But Daniel, Mike, let me get you guys' favorite bets for this week.
Yeah, let me give 2 of my favorite ones, Malik. I mean, I've been penciling these ones in. First off, number 1, I was watching the Miami Dolphins face, last week. They got absolutely killed. But one guy who surprised me, who I really just have to give respect. I think this dude is a legit top 5 running back in the NFL. I think 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 is that dude. He was in a terrible offense, and there was multiple times where there was nothing to go, nothing happening. He barely got, I believe, 12 to 14 touches, but this dude had a touchdown that shouldn't have even been a touchdown. I'm all in on him in a divisional matchup against the Patriots. And if you're looking for a way to bet him, I like his over in receiving yards at 25.5, but I also like him to score a touchdown just at plus 100. I feel like that's very safe for a guy. They obviously have Ollie Gordon, but I am just a huge fan of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. I think he is easily their best playmaker. Even could be a better playmaker right now than Tyreek Hill. So I'm a huge fan of 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗏. Give me everything with him. And number 2 is one I've been circling. It's DeVonta Smith. I think DeVonta Smith has a killer matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a matchup we saw obviously in the Super Bowl last year. He had the deep touchdown. And I'm just concerned for the Steve Spagnuolo-led defense. Obviously, you have, one very good corner, but outside of that, I'm just not sold on them. And I think that this is something where we saw Keenan Allen get a ton of quick touches. We saw Quentin Johnson absolutely work them. I think Johnson had multiple 5, 6, 7 targets. I'm in on DeVonta Smith, and his line for me is just too low. 57.5 for a player of his caliber with a defense that is going to be pinpointing Saquon Barkley clearly as the number 1 weapon, Jalen Hurts' legs clearly as the number 2, and A.J. Brown is by far and away, in my opinion, a better wide receiver. So DeVonta Smith is 4th on the totem pole for the Chiefs defense. I think this line is far too low. Give me DeVonta Smith, and I wouldn't be shocked if he gets close to 100 yards in this game. So DeVonta Smith, I love. 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗏. You like anything?
Yeah, I've got 3 bets for you guys. The first one is 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗏 I took it at over 55.5 rushing yards against the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday night. Yesterday, I was looking at it. It dropped down to 53.5. I would be taking it at both lines. They came out and said after the game, John Harbaugh, that Najee Harris was on a snap count in week 1, and that's why we saw Hampton absolutely dominate the backfield. But I still expect to see a heavy dose of 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗏, and I believe in the talent still, and I believe he's going to be able to break off a long run and take advantage of this Raiders defense. I think this is going to be a leading game script for the Chargers throughout the game. We're just going to see a ton of carries for 𝗦𝗢𝗡𝗏. And with a line like that, you're just basically betting on him to get what's blocked for him on most of his touches and then rip a long one here or there. And I just think that's too low. The other one that I really like is Tyler Warren, over 39.5 receiving yards. He opened up and set a record for the most receptions by a rookie tight end in their debut in NFL history. Him and Harold Fannin actually tied for that record last week. And he's seeing all of that over the middle work. He's getting a lot of the Colts run. Shane Steichen and the Colts run a lot of RPOs. He's seeing a lot of the reads on those RPOs. So I'm buying into the talent. I'm buying into him being able to draw targets at a high level and his ability to do something with those targets. He cleared this line by far and away. He saw the volume last week to clear this line once again. So I'm buying into the Tyler Warren hype and the fact that he is a very legitimate tight end already 1 game into his NFL career. So I will be betting on him to do something special once again. And my last bet is appointment betting. You have to bet this every single week that the line is where it's at. And it's a little bit gritty. It's Kyren Williams, longest rush under 14.5 yards. Kyren Williams, in my opinion, and the data backs this up, is just an absolute plotter. Since the beginning of last season, he has 359 carries. 7 of them have gone for 15-plus yards. It is a slightly above 2% rate of him going for 15-plus yards on his carries. And I could be a little off base here, but I read the injury report for the Rams yesterday. I believe that there's a very real chance that they're down both of their offensive guards in this game. So the interior rushing attack could be a little bit less potent than we're used to seeing. And you know how it is, Jeffrey Simmons against a banged up interior offensive line. I expect him to feast. And like I said, just the data points us to this one. I bet it every single week if it's hovering around that 15 number. So those are my 3 favorite bets this week.
All righty. Hey, you got anything else you want to add before we head out?
Yeah, I could rattle off a lot. I think the one I love, and I'm curious to see what happens with the quarterback position with the 49ers, but Ricky Pearsall, I'm all in on. I think that obviously he only had 4 targets last week, but this dude is legit. And with Brandon Ayuk not there, with George Kittle not there, they're going up against the Saints defense, who I thought had one good piece, and that's Cameron Jordan, maybe DeMar Davis, but cornerbacks, I'm not sold on. I think Ricky Pearsall has a phenomenal matchup. And like I said, I would wait to see what the official news. I don't know if what the news is on Purdy playing or not, but I am all in on Ricky Pearsall as well as Alvin Kamara. I'm in on. I think last week was not a flash in the pan, but they threw 46 times and he only had 2 targets. I don't think that's sustainable. I mean, he was out there a ton, and I think he obviously had a touchdown last week, but he only had 11 rushes, 2 targets. Whatever way this game script goes, I think he's featured a lot more because quite frankly, they need him, and you can't be throwing the ball 46 times. Like I said, I don't think that 2 targets is sustainable. So I would be looking at him. I love his touchdown line at +100, as well as I would probably be looking to take his over in receptions.
Well, those are our plays that we love for not even fantasy football, but also betting this upcoming week. We hope that you guys tail. I've been quietly doing really, really well in my college football bets too. I'm gonna wait. We'll hold off on that because I'm not gonna jinx that too much. But I want to get to this Bengals offense before we start the UFC talk. The question of the day is: will this Bengals offense find themselves? Obviously, I always like to carve out a moment on Friday shows to discuss the Bengals. Bengals are going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? It's a lot. It's a lot to unpack there for me personally because I'm curious to see the utilization of Travis Hunter from a defensive perspective. I talked about it on State of the Jungle. I know people are looking forward to Travis Hunter lining up against Ja'Marr Chase. He wasn't utilized really much of at all on the defensive side of the ball. Really, his snaps were very limited. But I feel like this is the kind of game in which you would want to use his defensive prowess to maybe combat T. Higgins, to combat a Ja'Marr Chase. So I'm curious, what are you guys' thoughts? Do you think the Bengals offense will find themselves, or do you think we're in for another slug-it-out game? I personally think they will find themselves. But
yeah, they're going to find themselves 1,000%. I'm not even concerned. I'll get to one point about the Jaguars that I'm a fan of on their team, but this was the perfect storm in week 1. It was the Cleveland Browns divisional matchup, and the thing is they have 2 very, very qualified man-to-man, one-on-one cornerbacks in Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. It's very rare that you get an NFL team with those 2 type of guys on the boundary. And what do you know? They line up with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. This was a rough game for Joe Burrow. He only had 100-something passing yards. This doesn't happen again. It doesn't. And I'm very confident in saying that. I think that Joe Burrow is much closer this week to be throwing for I'll even say like 350 to 400 yards and having another 110 passing yard game. I'm very confident saying that. And they're going to find themselves. And I think that seeing this passing attack, I'd be very shocked if we're not seeing Burrow with 250 to 300 passing yards. And like I said, you talked about Travis Hunter. Whatever happens, but he ain't going to be able to stop. He's not a better cornerback than Denzel Ward. He's not a better cornerback right now than Greg Newsome. He's not going to be able to stop Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins. They are going to get theirs. And the Bengals will be able to go back and look at the film from week 1 and see what went wrong and see that they didn't give these guys a lot of chances. And I'm very confident they find themselves. The one caveat and the one way that this may not happen is if the offensive line doesn't hold up. And I'm willing to bet that it does, but that is the number one X factor. You have Arik Armstead, you've got Josh Hines-Allen, and you've got Trayvon Walker. This is a phenomenal front 4, and they've got the leading tackler in the NFL in the linebacking core. I'm betting on the Bengals, but that is, if you guys want a matchup to watch the tackles against these guys and watch what Arik Armstead does, because those guys, they are very fun to watch on the defensive line.
Yeah, and I know that along with that, Amarius Mims on the injury report. I believe he returned to practice yesterday, but still something to
monitor,
not be too thrilled about. And I know this is very much a Dalton Reisner podcast, Dalton Reisner program. But then again, I mean, he's been in the building for what, 3 weeks at this point. So just another one to monitor. I mean, obviously we talked about it on the show. Believe that he is not the long term, but for the rest of the season, the starter over Lucas Patrick. But now he's being thrust in there, whether you like it or not. So I agree. I think the Jaguars defensive line against the Bengals offensive line is the matchup to watch on that side. And going over to the offense, I mean, there's nothing to hang your hat on when it came to their play last week. But the place you can find solace is that this is what happens every year with the Bengals. They cannot figure it out until the back half of December. And I think that was also compounded by the fact, like you talked about, Daniel, that the Bengals never match up well against the Browns. It has been their kryptonite to a degree for throughout Joe Burrow's time in Cincinnati, and you compound that with what their early season struggles have been over the last couple of years, and it was just a recipe for disaster. And that was that. And I said it after the game. That's not a game that went the Bengals' way last year, and I'm just happy it did. Like you, it's not driven by anything that we saw on the field last year. It's driven by what we saw last year, or not. It's not driven by anything we saw last week. It's driven by what we saw last year. I have confidence in this Bengals offense to return to what we saw throughout the 2023, throughout the 2024 season. So we'll see. I think the matchup is there for Burrow and the passing attack to thrive. You're leaning on hope and not really anything that we saw last week. But I think what we've seen over the last couple of years is given us plenty of reasons to have hope.
Well, quietly, I'll just say this. Out of their last 4 matchups, the Bengals have won 3 of them against the Browns. So they're slowly but surely dispelling that narrative. We'll see exactly what takes place, though. No, I agree with you. I think the Bengals offense find themselves. I think this is a good spot for the tight ends. I think that they're going to emerge. Like I brought up Noah Fant, I brought up Mike Gesicki, but I also think Ja'Marr Chase is going to find the end zone this game. I think Ja'Marr Chase is going to find the end zone. I think he gets over that 100-yard mark. I just don't know if there's a cornerback in the National Football League that I think will get the best of him, honestly speaking. But I think when you couple that with how the Bengals plan to utilize him moving around the field, I think he's going to have success. That's where I'll leave it at. We'll obviously be doing the post-game morning show. Something I didn't say on the show is we appreciate you guys for spending your mornings with us. If you guys can do us a huge favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. We appreciate y'all for making us a part of your morning routine. Remember, the morning show is live every single Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 10:30 a.m. We'll be breaking down all the latest news in the NFL and sports and just in general. So big boxing fight this week happening too. We got Terrence Crawford taking on Canelo Alvarez. I'm curious to hear Evan's thoughts on that. So without further ado, I want to bring in TWSN lead MMA journalist, my guy, Evan Theohara, so we can talk about UFC Noche taking place this weekend. So what's going on, Evan?
How you doing, Malik?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Are we going head to head?
I don't know. Are we?
I don't know, man. Are we going head to head? I know last week we didn't see eye to eye on the main event, and you're my brother, so I won't gloat too much. But there's a lot of fights that we got to talk about on this card. And before you speak on this, I just want to steal your thunder really, really quickly because I want to make sure that I have this completely in the clear. My favorite fight. Now, Danny's gonna be joining us on the discussion as well. My favorite fight. One of my favorite fights on this card is the debut of 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira. She's a finisher through and through, man. She's a finisher through and through. And I'll be honest with you, man. I don't know if you got a chance to look at the odds for her to finish this fight. Unlike her brother, no offense, she has submission ability as well. She has the ability to get this fight done on the ground. But their calling card is their knockouts. This is what the Pereiras do. I hate that I'm giving this play out so strongly and so freely, but Evan, if you take 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira to win this fight by knockout, remember, she's 19 years old. She's making her debut as 19 years old. I don't know if I've ever seen a female make a debut that young. Maybe Maya Lesnar will be making her debut in the future. Who knows? I don't know. But 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira is 19 years old. She's taking on a woman that's 37. I like 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira's chances in this fight. Not only that, if you want to take 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira to win this fight via knockout, is sitting at plus 400. Plus 400. This feels like a spot where the UFC is feeding. I believe she's fighting Rendon to the Wolves. This feels like that for me. If you believe that 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira is going to win this fight via submission or knockout, Daniel, Evan, that's still sitting at plus 310. The point I'm saying is I think that there's going to be a finish in this fight. And I think this finish is going to come at the hands of 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira making her UFC debut. Evan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have the same exact pick on that one. I have 𝗚𝗡𝗓 Pereira by knockout. Rendon, she's been in the UFC for a while, but sometimes you just got to go with the electric prospect. And especially, Rendon's a veteran, but I'm not going to act like she's a top caliber fighter in the division. Pereira is definitely the better striker. I think my only concern is if she has no takedown defense, but it seems like she does for any of the film I've seen on her. She's also got a good submission game, but she's got devastating power. And I don't think Rendon's going to be able to withstand that. I've got Pereira by knockout and probably pretty early.
Here's the crazy thing too, man, about this. We talked about her being in the UFC for a while, but she doesn't have a lot of fights in the UFC because she's had a lot of cancellations. She's only had 2 fights in the UFC. One she won by split decision. The other one she lost by unanimous decision. She doesn't have, make sure I have her age right. I want to make sure I have her age correct. So bear with me for a second. Sorry, she's not 36. She's 30. I mean, she's not 37. She's 36 years old. Same thing. Listen, this is a girl who has 2 fights in the UFC. She's already up there in age. Women's MMA, obviously, there's no rhyme or reason or any math to it. I just think Alex Pereira is going to find her chin at some point. I'm taking the knockout right now. That is my play of the night. Let me be extremely clear. But as we move on in the discussion, I think that Vegas has been very generous to us for a lot of these fights. I'm be honest with you, Evan. I think when I look at some of these fights, it kind of is a shock to me. A couple things I want to rattle off really quickly. And I want your opinion on these, Evan, as we're talking. Claudio Puelles, he's fighting again. I think we're all in agreement. It's submission or bust for him, right? He's not winning this fight via decision against Joaquim Silva. I don't like Joaquim Silva, to be honest with you. But I don't like Claudio Puelles either. But I feel like this is a fight in which Joaquim is going to be dumb enough to give Claudio the opportunity to submit him. I'm just saying that. And listen, I've seen Claudio submit some of the best guys, some of the guys that I rate very high. He submitted one of my heroes that I grew up watching that got me in MMA, Clay Guida. Listen, Claudio Puelles, this might be a little bit of a hot take. I'm going to sprinkle him to win this fight by submission. The smarter play is probably Joaquim Silva. But I do believe that as the fight prolongs, there will become opportunities because Claudio finds a way to just last, to exist sometimes. Not unless he's fighting a guy that just has devastating power, just gets him out of there. But if you take this fight, if you believe at some point in this fight, Claudio Puelles is going to get this fight to the ground, well, guess what? I would sprinkle the submission. What are your thoughts, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I have Claudio Puelles winning this fight. Not because I like Claudio Puelles. I mean, we've seen him against anybody who can push him on the feet for an extended period of time, and it doesn't go well, especially with like longer, rangier strikers. But that's not what Joaquim Silva is at all, or definitely not at this point in his career. It definitely seems like Silva is more comfortable on the ground, and that's not something I would be going into this fight against Puelles thinking. Puelles is an A-tier grappler.
A-tier, for sure.
And if he can get this fight on the mat, he's either going to submit him or he's just going to dominate a decision. But I do like the sprinkle on a submission here.
And listen, if you believe he's going to win this fight by submission, you're getting it at plus 350. I'm running. Listen, Daniel, I'm so sorry.
No,
you didn't give your opinion on Alex. You didn't give your opinion on Claudio. Let's hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, for sure for Claudio, I'm in on it. And the reason why, I just remember watching him. I mean, it's kind of tough watching some of these guys who are more of these jiu-jitsu guys at times where it's like completely outmatched. I mean, his fight against, I think his last fight, Faraz Ziam, I remember I was very disappointed with him at certain moments in the fight, but I feel like you said, Silva's going to give him opportunities. And I feel like this is something where if Silva doesn't get him out of there quickly, I could see a second or third round submission. So for me, and for the pathway to victory being really a submission, if you're getting that at plus 3 something, that is 1000% worth it. And for me, like I said, I like the going round 2, round 3. So I'm going to sprinkle on that. But for sure, if there is a clear path to victory for one fighter and you are getting that at plus money, I'm always a fan of that. Like if you can pinpoint and say this guy is a knockout artist and it's only in round 1 and round 2, and if he goes later, he gasses out, and the betting on him early is a real, it's something that you should definitely do, because in fighting, as you guys know, there's so many different outcomes. But if you can pinpoint one specific outcome, bet on that more than not. So I'm a fan of that, as well as, like you said, I like the KO for Pereira, but I think a finish for sure. That's the safe bet. Now, it is the age gap and the hype. There's too many instances of, hey, you got to bet on a highly touted prospect heading in, especially against somebody, like you said, that's not respectfully not a high top 10 caliber opponent in Rendon who she's facing. So I'm with you on the finish.
One thing I want to talk about really quickly, Evan, is just two fights that I find that are very interesting. You got Jose Daniel Medina taking on Dusko Todorovic. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't love the odds. I think the odds are really bad for this fight. And I just look at it. I don't like Dusko. I don't think he's a good fighter. This feels also there's this weird thing, right? Are they calling this UFC no trade? Because I know they had this, or they are calling it that, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It feels like they try to set these guys up, to win big in front of their crowd and stuff like that. And I just feel like Medina, although he struggled, Todorovic, what has he shown? What has he shown? What makes people think he deserves, if I have this correctly, he's a minus 400. How? Talk to me about this, Evan. Why? Why is this the case?
I have no idea why Dusko Todorovic is minus 400 in any UFC fight. I mean, I'll go as far to say that if I moved him down a weight class, I don't think he's minus 400 against anybody there.
Yeah.
But Jose Medina isn't any better. I mean, there's a reason he's not the favorite in this fight. He hasn't shown anything at all. I guess to me, if I'm looking at it from an odds maker's perspective, neither of them have looked good, but at least Dusko has done something in the UFC so far, and that's probably why they put him as a favorite. I don't think that warrants a minus 400 price tag. As from a betting perspective, I'm staying as far away from this fight as possible. I just don't like Jose Medina enough to put anything on him. But also, Dusko's odds at minus 400 are just ridiculous.
I like him enough to sprinkle Medina because I rate Dusko that badly. I think when you take a guy who are similar in skill set, and then you get one guy who obviously is the underdog and he's going to have the crowd backing him and stuff like that. I don't know. For me, I think that I think whoever sprinkles on Medina is going to be very, very happy at the end of the night. I think Medina is going to win this fight. Dusko, you just never know what you're going to get. You never know what you're going to get, and more times than not, it's something bad. Just to be quite frank. Daniel, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, all I'll say is I saw Dusko get
flat. I've seen him
multiple
flat
times, like against I forgot Malik, like bad. So any guy that's like that for me at minus 400, I'm good off of his side, and I think there's definitely be a live betting opportunity as well.
I agree with you. I want to see when's the last time Dusko has won in the UFC is too. I'm very curious. They both lost to Zachary Reese. Okay. The last time Dusko Todorovic has won in the UFC was 2022.
Eesh.
That's the last time he's won in the UFC. And he beat a guy who's no longer in the UFC in Jordan Wright. I'm sorry. I gotta take my chances on this as well. Moving on up, I want to talk about Jesus Aguilar, right? I want to talk about that fight really quickly. He's taking on Lewis. How do you say it? Ghroulier? He got flatlined against Odie, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Odie Osborne in round 2. What do you think in this fight, Ev?
Man, I'm back in the underdog here. I'm gonna take
Me
Jesus
too.
Aguilar.
Me too.
I don't know. I mean, Ghroulier came into that fight with Ode undefeated, and he was pretty hyped up prospect at that point. I know he's got a nice skill set, but I think this is a bad matchup for him. I mean, Aguilar, despite a up and down record, is probably one of the toughest flyweights in the division. Just like in terms of pure doggedness, if you want to put it that way. And Ghroulier, I mean, what I saw against Ode was he's got great offense, but he's got no defense.
Mm-hmm.
And Aguilar is an aggressive fighter. He's going to look to get into the pocket as quick as he can, either to land a big shot or take it to the ground. And I honestly think he's the better grappler in this one.
I agree.
I think this fight looks a lot like the Ghroulier versus Osborne fight. I think Ghroulier is going to drop his hands at some point, probably late, because I think Aguilar is just going to tire him out, and then finish him off with the TKO at some point in this.
I'm glad we're seeing eye to eye on a lot. Listen, I want to make sure we speed this up a little bit. Another fight that I kind of got my antennas on for, Rafa Garcia taking on Jared Gordon. That's going to be a good fight. I think it's gonna be basically held at boxing range unless Jared decides to take this fight to the ground. But I think Rafa and him are. I think Jared is who I lean for that fight, but I wouldn't touch it from a betting perspective. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be an up and down fight. I believe that unless Jared takes the path of least resistance.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more confident on this one than you are.
Yeah.
I'm pretty high on Jared Gordon overall. I think he's a
Okay.
bit underrated. I mean, he's coming off a flatline KO win
Yep.
over Thiago Moises. He finished Marco Madsen.
Yep.
He fought Nasrat Haqparast, who's a borderline top 15 guy, to a very, very close decision.
Yes.
And 2.5 years ago, he probably should have beat Paddy Pimblett by a decision. Like,
We don't talk about that. We don't talk about that.
This is a guy I think he is a borderline top 15 talent. He's got quality
37
wins. Yep, he's got quality wins. And Garcia, as he's got quality losses, but his wins don't impress me nearly as much.
I respect that.
I think what I really like in this fight, if you want to sprinkle on something, is Jared Gordon by TKO at plus 650.
I can see that.
He's
That's
won
at
his
plus
last-
650?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sprinkling that. I'm
He's won his-
sprinkling that.
he's won his last 2 fights by knockout, and
Yeah.
I think he's just got the advantage in this one.
Yeah. And you got to wonder about Rafa's durability too as well. I didn't know it was plus 650. I'm definitely
lost-
sprinkling that.
Garcia lost his last fight by knockout too.
Yep.
That's
Yes,
where I
he
see
did.
that one
Yes, he
going.
did. Want to keep the conversation moving forward. Got Rob Font taking on David Martinez. I'll put it this way. I think this is a spot in which David Martinez is going to start strong, going to fade. And then I think Rob Font, it's a Rob Font classic. I think Rob Font's going to wind up winning this fight. I would say hold off on betting it before the fight. I think you can get it live bet. I think you can live bet this and cash in big.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I have Rob Font in this one by a classic Rob Font performance.
Yeah.
I think it'll look a lot like the fight he had with John Matsumoto, but probably a little better for Rob Font.
Yep.
I just don't think Martinez is quite at the level of Matsumoto, but I got Font by
agree.
decision.
I agree. All right. We can cut the tension with a knife. We know what it's time to talk about. We know. Diego Lopez taking on Jean Silva. Who do you got?
I got John Silva in this fight.
Okay.
I'm not as confident on it as minus 230 says.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, because of Lopez's reach. He's the much taller fighter, but I look at it more from the Silva perspective here, where we just saw Lopez fight Volkanovski, who was a shorter fighter than him. An older fighter than Silva is. I mean, Volkanovski's obviously an amazing fighter, but he's definitely taken a step back. I just think that with Silva's precision on the feet and Lopez's tendency to get hit, this has a crazy knockout written all over it. I could be wrong on this with Lopez's reach on the feet, but Silva has shown me that he can hold his own on the ground, and obviously is an incredibly precise striker. So I'm going to back Silva in this one, but I don't love that it's at minus 230.
Okay. Daniel, what are your thoughts? Who you got in this fight?
Yeah, man, I think this is a Silva finish. I think so. I think that from a betting perspective as well, I think that's the pathway to go. Obviously, this is a 5-round fight, but I would probably be looking at a Silva finish. Like Diego Lopez has been like, he put a very good performance in moments against Volkanovski. Something where I thought he was going to beat Volkanovski, and he just wasn't as overly aggressive. And I do think that this is that's a somewhat comparable from the height perspective as what we would be looking at. But Silva isn't going to keep you outside on his jab. He's not going to just keep you outside on his jab. He is going to work his way inside. And I think that I love this fight to get ended within 3 rounds. I don't know exactly what the over-under is, but man, I'm ready. And I think in every single one of Silva's fights, he has had one fight that he hasn't won by decision. The rest of them has been finishes. I think that this is a finish on Silva's part, because also styles make fights. And Silva is going to bring the pressure as well as Lopez is not going to back down. Lopez is going to try to walk him down. Lopez is not a guy who sticks on the outside as well. He's going to try to get his offense going. So for me, I like the Silva finish, but what I love is, and let me see the odds, but I love the under in this fight. I think that whatever way, if Diego Lopez is to win this fight as well, I do think that he has a chance to submit Jean Silva. I mean, we know what Diego Lopez can do as a grappler as well. So let me look at the odds, but my favorite bet would be the under. I like the under 2.5 rounds, and I do think that this is a Silva finish.
You know, I had to change really quickly. I had to throw on my shirt. I had to throw on my shirt for a second. You know what? Because last week we sat up here and me and Evan went head to head. Daniel and I agreed, but I once again had to prove why I am who I say I am and who they say I am, why I am the UFC guy. You know what I mean? Listen, I got my little belt here, TWSN belt with my name on it. Listen, make no mistake about it. I hear everything you guys are talking about. But unlike last week, I'm not going to get moved off my stance. Last week, I talked about why I thought that I could see Mauricio Rufy struggle. And I pulled myself off of that. I didn't come off of the main event. I didn't come off the main event, and I wound up being correct about that. But I told everybody Benoit Saint-Denis' path to victory was going to be to take this fight to the ground, drag him into deep waters, and submit him. Listen, where's the camera on me? Okay, hear me out. We've seen Carlos Prates go down. We've seen Mauricio Rufy go down. We've seen Kyle Barallo go down. That is the fighting nerds. And guess what? We're about to see Jean Silva go down. Diego Lopez is going to beat Jean Silva. I think you guys are underrating him a little bit. When you look at the people that Diego Lopez has lost to, it's the elite of the elite caliber. It is that, right? Alexander Volkanovski, although he's not the same Volk that we once saw, he was a little bit more timid, obviously. He still hurt Volk in that fight. Diego Lopez still has this ability about him to still sway the fight in his direction. I just think that for what Jean Silva was going to bring at him, he's seen it already. He's seen every single style. And then you got to wonder, right? Because it's not like a team sport. This is one-on-one individual. You got to wonder how his team taking losses is affecting him. You have to wonder that. Because guess what? The fighting nerds are not some impenetrable force as they once were before. So I'm laying it right on the table. Hear me out. I believe wholeheartedly Diego Lopez is going to win this fight. Not only do I think Diego Lopez is going to win this fight, I think he's going to win this fight very convincingly. I think people are sleeping on Diego Lopez. Remember what the conversation was. We all felt like Diego Lopez was next in line when Ilia Topuria had went up to lightweight. We believed in our heart that Diego Lopez was next in line. It just made sense. Listen, Jean Silva hasn't faced much of any resistance since coming to the UFC. And for a guy that likes to talk a lot, he has backed it up. But I'd like to see him actually get it done and not play with his food. Bryce Mitchell, it felt like he played with him out there. He allowed Bryce to have bright spots to a degree. Listen, Diego Lopez isn't the type of fighter that you're going to want to allow to have bright spots. And here's the thing. Just like Jean Silva, Diego Lopez is a finisher. He's a finisher. So, boys, I'm planting my flag. I'll go 1 versus 2. I'll take it. Diego Lopez beats Jean Silva, and fighting nerds go down. That's my bold prediction. That's my bold prediction. So I'll leave it at that. Evan, we'll see. We're going head to head. You got a little backup this time. We'll see if it works in your favor.
Yeah.
But I like my chances. Listen, we greatly appreciate you, Evan, for joining us for another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show. Obviously, we'll be sure to have you on next week, and we'll be recapping everything as we go through it. Best of luck, my man, to your you guys. How'd you guys do last night, Commanders?
Not good.
No, we're not gonna talk about? Okay.
Rough.
All right. Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to having you on the show next week, us talking everything through. We hope that you enjoy the fights. As always, I'll probably shoot you over a call, a text, or something like that. We'll be shooting the, shit, so to speak, talking about sports. But thank you so much, my man, for joining us. We appreciate you, brother.
Have a great day, guys.
Yep, you
Catch
too.
you, bro.
All right, so here we are, man. I'm going against my brother once again. We got to see who's going to come out as the victor. I've proven to be the guy when it comes to UFC, and I think I'm going to walk away again with the crown. Listen, we appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down Morning Show, making us a part of your daily routine. We hope that we gave you guys an entertaining show. We hope that you take Michael Hare and Steve Bradshaw's fantasy advice. We hope that you guys have a profitable weekend betting on all sports, UFC, college football, NFL, the whole 9 yards. We appreciate you guys so much. And remember, there's only one way you should be waking up, talking sports, having the conversation, and that is the right way. We'll see you guys on Monday for another episode of the Sit Down. Take care.
This is 𝗕𝗘𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏. You ain't